It is Judgment Day. Sources say Maduro's been praying to Jesus. That's the narco-terrorist, socialist dictator who took over for Hugo Chavez in Venezuela and keeps flooding American streets with migrants, gangs, and cocaine. 11 U.S. warships, including our largest carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, are now in the Caribbean. Venezuela is surrounded. The strike group is waiting on orders from the commander-in-chief as the president's holding high-level meetings at the White House, calculating our next move against the narco state. The choice is Maduro's. Trump's giving him an ultimatum: abdicate power or else. After Trump's phone call with the dictator, that's the best offer.
The New York Times reported that you had a phone call with Maduro. Did you?
I don't want to comment on it. The answer is yes.
And can you tell us a little bit
No,
about
I can't do that.
Mr. President, would you say it went well?
I wouldn't say it went well or badly. It was a phone call.
This time, it wasn't a perfect phone call. The Venezuelan strongman reportedly asked for global amnesty, and Trump said, how about no? Then he said, what if I hold free and fair elections? Trump said, no, you already did that and you lost. Then he asked, if I step down, can I still control the military? 47 said, pack your bags. Even with a $50 million bounty on his head, Maduro's maintained an iron grip on power by bribing his cronies with kickbacks from the coke, oil, and gold rackets. But this time, the narcos aren't calling shots anymore. Uncle Sam is, a.k.a. Trump. And the president's tightening the noose. In the last 24 hours, Trump declared the airspace above Venezuela entirely closed. Closing airspace can only mean one thing. This is escalating, and it's escalating quickly. The commander-in-chief isn't going to ratchet up the pressure, then walk away without a win. There's no way Maduro can face down the full force of a U.S. carrier strike group. The president is keeping his options open.
What's the position on whether U.S. troops on the ground is a possibility there? I know you've answered that before, but what's the current operative
in Venezuela? I think my previous answer stands. There's many options at the president's disposal that are on the table.
Maduro's a sitting duck, and word on the street is he'll be out of power before Christmas. No one's bailing the socialist out. He's getting no love from his sponsors in Beijing and Moscow. Putin and Xi Jinping are at the table with Trump doing much bigger trade and diplomatic deals. They're not going to throw Maduro a lifeline and jeopardize the deals over a small fry in our backyard. And we're doing the Europeans a big favor. Venezuelan gangs have been trafficking boatloads of coke to West Africa, and the Africans have been pouring it into France and Germany. Maduro's isolated. According to UN investigators, he's guilty of crimes against humanity: torture, murder, sexual violence. He only got 20% of the vote last year, stole the election, and wouldn't leave. And he's unleashed migrants, gangs, and poison onto our shores. Chuck Schumer's backed military action in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Yemen, and Ukraine. Schumer's basically down for whatever, whenever, no questions asked. But now that Trump's the president, he has questions.
Americans are right to wonder, what on earth is Donald Trump planning in Venezuela? Is Donald Trump nudging America into another war? Is he seeking regime change for Maduro? Will he put U.S. troops in harm's way? Nobody knows.
There's no way Trump's telling Schumer anything. Might as well tell Maduro. Schumer's old enough to know the war on drugs has been a 4-decade failure. And he knows that Trump didn't storm back into the White House just to repeat the failures of past presidents. The Secretary of the Navy gets it.
Drugs kill more Americans than we've ever lost in wars. So I think at the end of the day, the president has correctly identified this as an attack on the country, which it is.
The narco traffickers are on deliver or die missions. They're ferrying cargo through the Pacific and the Gulf of America. Some of these speedboats are 40 feet long and carry $70 million of contraband. Taking out these boats hit the cartels where it hurts, their bank accounts. And forcing out Maduro sends a powerful signal to the Colombians, the Mexicans, and the Chinese. The Monroe Doctrine's back, and American deterrence is back. Venezuela is a launching pad for coke, and they're getting squeezed. The CIA is already on the ground there and have been authorized to give the president options. Operation Southern Spear is designed to defend the American homeland from drug warfare. And guess who has a problem with that?
If you want to understand if those are drug boats, who would go on those boats, it's people who have families that have been kidnapped. And they're told, go on the boats or we will execute your children.
Where's he getting this from? Coke boats aren't being driven by hostages. The Wall Street Journal reports each boat is manned by 3 to 4 well-paid professionals: a pilot, a mechanic, a navigator, and a voucher man, someone who's trusted by the buyer and the seller. Now, someone's trying to sabotage U.S. operations, and the saboteurs are coming from within our own country. Over the weekend, the Washington Post accused the Secretary of War of committing war crimes. Hegseth order on first Caribbean boat strike, officials say, kill them all. The story goes something like this. U.S. Southern Command launched an airstrike against a Coke boat. They saw that there were survivors and launched a second strike. So there were none. Pete calls it fake news. Quote, our current operations in the Caribbean are lawful under both U.S. and international law, with all actions in compliance with the law of armed conflict, and approved by the best military and civilian lawyers up and down the chain of command. Here's the White House.
Does the administration deny that that second strike happened, or did it happen and the administration denies that Secretary Hegseth gave the order?
Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law.
Lethal operations like this go through layers of lawyers. From the War Department, state, national security, everything goes up and down the chain of command and gets signed off on because we value life in America. The United States has conducted strikes all over the globe like this for decades. But for some reason, when President Trump does it, it's a crime.
What law is it that allows no survivors?
The strike conducted on September 2nd was conducted in self-defense to protect Americans in vital United States interests. The strike was conducted in international waters and in accordance with the law of armed conflict.
When Barack Obama authorized lethal strikes against ISIS during the war on terror, and our operators launched a missile at a convoy of ISIS fighters, and the missile hit, boom, everyone's dead. Wait, the smoke clears. You see one guy still hanging off the back of a Humvee, trying to get away. You double tap, boom, you finish the job. You're not going to send American men in to grab the surviving terrorist, put him in handcuffs, and take him to our base and give him a dinner and a doctor. This is no different. These cartel traffickers have been designated as foreign terrorists. We're blowing up terrorists in the Caribbean, but we're supposed to rescue them from drowning if they survive? Now, I don't know what happened with this strike, but Senator Van Hollen, who never met a Latin gangbanger that he didn't like, has a new hoax.
New hoax alert. New hoax alert. New hoax alert.
I think it's very possible there was a war crime committed. Of course, for it to be a war crime, you have to accept the Trump administration's whole construct here.
That we're at war.
Which is we're in armed conflict at war with this particular, with the drug gangs. Of course, they've never presented the public with the information they've got here. But it could be worse than that, right? If that theory is wrong, then it's plain murder.
Barbaric cartels are injecting billions of dollars of narcotics into our country, causing death and violence and addiction. That's not a war crime, but stopping them is a war crime. Now we know what the Seditious Six video was setting up.
Do you believe if there was a second strike to eliminate any survivors, that that constitutes a war crime?
It seems to. If what has been reported is accurate, I've got serious concerns about anybody in that chain of command stepping over a line that they should never step over.
It makes sense, doesn't it? Kelly and his crew were telling soldiers to disobey their superiors to hit Coke boats. Next time the Secretary of War orders a Coke boat blown, we could see soldiers mutiny. Democrats are telling soldiers to mutiny.
Just say simply, I'm not going to do that. That's against the law.
It puts a lot of burden on the troops to make a decision in real time. But
a reasonable person can tell something that is legal and something that is illegal.
So would you refuse these specific orders to strike drug boats if you were still in uniform?
Well, the difference between the initial strike and what is being reported, as a second strike, and those things are different. I think this administration has tied themselves in knots.
Well, the ladies of The View, who I know have never done cocaine, ever, says not only is Hegseth a war criminal, but all the rank and file should go on trial.
The person who gave the order can be held accountable and put in prison. The people that conducted the orders, that pulled the trigger, are also responsible and can be held accountable. So now you have people that are serving their countries, that are serving this country as patriots, perhaps following an illegal order, and then themselves can be court-martialed.
I don't think American servicemen and women participating in Operation Southern Spear are watching The View. But word's getting out that following orders in Latin America could land you in Leavenworth. Senators are telling soldiers to use the N-word.
You mentioned that you were a captain in the Navy. If you received that order, would you have carried it out?
No.
Trump says no one's getting punished except the people interfering with military operations. Quote, there are laws that affect our nation. Read Title 18, Chapter 115, Section 2387. Whoever with the intent to interfere, impair, influence the loyalty, morale, or discipline of the military and naval forces will be fined or imprisoned up to 10 years. So where do these people even get off? The Biden administration, after Abbey Gate, executed 10 Afghans with a Reaper drone and called it a righteous strike. 48 hours later, oops, it was an innocent family. I guess it's not a war crime if it's an accident. Bombs Away Barry dropped over 20,000 bombs on 7 countries in 2016. Killed thousands of people. Not all of them were terrorists. There was a lot of collateral damage. Was anyone court-martialed? What we're witnessing now is a setup. The Washington Post leaks a story about a double-tap strike, and the seditious six comes out and calls it a war crime. A week after their video told soldiers to disobey orders. It's so obvious, The View sees it.
Well, I know this is why those Democratic vets put out that video last week that people said, why would they need to say what's already obvious? The likelihood of this is it's not a war. We're not at war with Venezuela, but it's murder. It's flat out murder. And anyone that acted on those orders could be held on war crimes.
They've been foaming the runway for a while. CIA Slotkin, who's running point for this domestic propaganda operation, said last month, Trump, not Maduro, is the real dictator.
He seems to be laying the groundwork to stay in power. There are 2 ways this can happen, both straight out of the same authoritarian playbook. The first, a scenario in which Trump finds a pretext, invokes the Insurrection Act, and tries to impose martial law. Elections, therefore, could be canceled.
Isn't it funny that the CIA-backed seditious six doesn't want a real war on drugs? They want us to do the same thing that hasn't worked for decades. Well, maybe it has worked for the CIA. The CIA reportedly uses the war on drugs, cartels, Latin American paramilitary groups, as black ops, off-the-book operations to run money and weapons and rig elections. That's been widely reported. Now the military's leaking classified intelligence about airstrikes in the Caribbean? Seems like there's factions of the government that do not want Trump to be successful in Latin America. Isn't it weird that they have no issues fighting wars in Europe and bombing countries in the Middle East, but when it's in our own backyard and it's something that directly affects the American people, then they have a problem?
The United States is under attack from organized criminal narco-terrorists in our hemisphere, and the president is responding in the defense of our country. I do find it interesting that all these countries want us to send, and supply, for example, nuclear-capable Tomahawk missiles to defend Europe. But when the United States positions aircraft carriers in our hemisphere where we live, somehow that's a problem.